ridiculous fondling cardboard.
So Jason, I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. You've been involved in the show as like my friend and as an advisor since before I even launched episode 1. So thanks for, being there since the beginning.
You've always been awesome just as a presence in the hobby, and you've got your own thing going, which has always been fun to be a part of. So, or just to watch. So it's nice to be a part of it again.
I appreciate that. Your Instagram page really caught my attention because your handle, I think it's at Ginter Gold Fever. Did I get it right?
That's right. Nailed it.
And you are like hyper focused in on this one set, Allen and Ginter. How did you end up focusing on such a niche?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for highlighting the Instagram page too. I'm very proud of what has been happening there. Man, I've been collecting forever. I remember collecting pens and pencils as a kid, action figures, playing cards. Of course, baseball cards have kind of always been there. Erasers, even my mom would tell me that she would find empty bags of chips in my drawers, my dresser drawers, for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I've always been interested in why do collectors collect. I don't have an answer there other than
Were
it's
you
just
actually collecting the chips?
yeah,
I can't let this
not
go.
the chips, just
The
the bags.
bags.
Yeah, just shiny bags, Ruffles, Doritos, who knows? I mean, it's
That's
so
brilliant.
well, that's a word for it for sure. I've always been into that. I think obviously it was 2006. The set came out. I remember distinctly, just vividly, going to a local farmer's market, picking up a grab bag of cards from a local card shop who was there. Went home, of the many cards in that bag, there was a Randy Johnson 2006 Allen and Ginter base card. And I just loved everything about it. I remember just holding that thing and just studying it because the set has a retro design for anybody that doesn't know much about it. It's got a retro design. It's designed almost identically to the original 1887 Allen and Ginter's tobacco cards. So true homage to that original design. And I loved it. I love new things that look old. You can kind of see that all over my Instagram page too. I try to make everything look old. And it just grabbed me, and I've been obsessed with it ever since.
Cool. I didn't realize there was an 1887 original Allen and Ginter set.
Yeah.
Like what was it? It's a simple multi-sport set similar to what it is today.
So originally, it was called the Allen Ginter's World's Champions set, and it was I'm not sure how many cards were in it, but it was multi-sport, but it was very specifically champions of sport. So it was billiards, wrestling, baseball players were in there as well, early baseball players. It's an awesome set, so definitely check that out whenever you get a minute. But yeah, it's this new one or the newish one, I don't know what to call it other than the newer version of it, pays homage to that. So a lot of it is identical, even in design and the way the fonts are looking, and the now called Photoshop, but much different back then. The Photoshop design behind the players is meant to be, inspired by that original set too. So very similar.
Yeah, they definitely have a simple design, but I would almost call it like simple elegance because as you said, the font, there's little twisty special little, underlines and stuff. Like there's a very subtle elegance to it, and that's something I've always admired about the set. Um, some of the artwork and the design conversation I think we're going to get into later. You're already
Yeah.
starting to connect some of the dots for me. So
Yeah.
let's fast forward, I guess, from 1887 to 2006. So something caught your attention. It was a Randy Johnson base card. Was that you actually open a pack and that was one of the cards, or was it something else?
It was a team bag of cards, total random cards from this LCS, and so it was mixed in with so many other kinds of cards. So it was just that one that stood out because of that. There were others in there. I want to say there were Heritage and lots of contemporary at the time cards as well, but that was just the one that stood out for me. And it's not even just the design of it too. Like you said, it's elegant and I mean, it's just basically just white card. People love it for autographs too, for that reason. Love Ginter for autographs for that reason too. It's just a white background essentially with a very simple Victorian lettering, and then just a portrait of a baseball player too. There's no action scenes. These are posed portraits of these baseball players who I loved back then. But it's also the staining of the cards too. They stained them randomly too. So some cards are darker than other cards. So it was made to look kind of old in that way. And I've since interviewed creators of the set from back then, and that was very intentional on their part as well, which I mean that attention to detail I love. And they were very thick cards too back then, thicker than your regular playing card. So or trading card. So I loved all that about it too. Sorry, I don't know if I even answered your question, but I just went off on a tangent there.
Oh, this is perfect. Go off on all the tangents because
Okay.
you're inspiring so many more questions. So, made to look old, you just blew my mind because I always looked at these cards and thought, why are they a little off-white? Like they're
Yeah.
not pure white cards, but
Yeah.
they're made to look old and aged.
Sure.
And did they literally, when you say they stained some of the cards, do you mean that within Photoshop they made some of them look darker, a little more dirty than others, or did they literally go start rubbing some of them in the dirt?
Yeah, no, that'd be pretty cool if they did. No, my understanding of it from my conversation with one of the creators a few years ago, is that they stained the cardstock. They stained the actual cardboard paper before printing on them. So they would do it early on in pre-production instead of it wasn't the photoshopping. Of course, they did. They did the different Photoshop splashes of color behind the players. But no, they actually just stained randomly with different levels of stain a sepia color into the actual cardstock itself.
That's
And they
actually
do it all the years. They did 2006. I think they did 2007. I don't know about anything beyond that. I know the more recent ones are not stained like they used to be. They're just much more uniform. But those early days was the best.
Yeah, that's super, super cool.
Yeah.
And when you said splashes of color, that's, an action, not like the splash of color Goodwin Champions, another multi-sport set,
Right.
which we'll get into that a little bit later. But um, the, you mentioned something that, they're simple and they have a lot of uh, different sports or even non-sports, celebrities, things like that, and they're good for autographs. That is so true. And you'll see Allen and Ginter show up in collections of people who have all kinds of different niches, all different backgrounds. And the one that's really sticking out in my mind is Snoop Dogg. There's
Oh
a
yeah.
he has got a really cool one or two cool looking cards from I don't know, probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And not that I'm a huge Snoop Dogg listener. I like some of his songs, but I remember actually going on like a little bit of a down a rabbit hole of R&B and rappers and trying to like find out who has cards. And I got a Jay-Z card, and I came across some Allen Ginter Snoop Dogg autographs, and they look incredible. And it
Yeah.
looks like they're pack pulled autographs, but a lot of them are just in person. But
Yeah.
they're made for it.
Exactly. I mean, that's so many autograph collectors really specifically focus on Ginter, even if they're not collecting sets of Ginter every year, they love to, pick a few subjects every year and get them signed because there is so much white space, because the blue Sharpie looks so great on them. That Snoop Dogg is actually when he was Snoop Lion. So it's a Snoop Lion card. And I want to say it must have been 2000 and somewhere between 2014 and 16 or so, somewhere around there. And he did have the official autograph card, which was pretty limited, so it's valuable. But lots of TTM successes with Snoop Dogg, now Lion at the time.
Interesting. TTM stands for through the mail for the uninitiated, and that's an area I really want to explore more, specifically
Hmm.
with golfers, specifically again with some of the aging population, because
Yeah,
if they're, Jack Nicklaus is a good example. I don't know if he's still signing cards per se, but somebody like that who's getting older,
yeah,
they're not going to be around for forever. So
yeah.
hit them up in
Oh yeah.
the mail when you can.
Yep.
So Snoop Lion, so he has limited autographs. They're probably not numbered, right? So it's not obvious to someone that they would be so short printed.
That's right. Yeah, Ginter is consistent with not numbering their autographs unless they have specific frames these last few years. So I'm sure I think we'll probably get into that at some point in this conversation, the mysteries of Ginter, and that's always one of them is how many of these autographs actually exist. I'd love if they numbered them every year. It'd be great to understand it more. It's also kind of nice to have the mystery of it as well as a collector, but yeah, as far as we understand it, for like a Snoop Dogg, they're probably not asking them to sign more than 200 of these, so that's kind of the baseline. There's definitely many variations there. There's plenty of other subjects that we haven't seen more than 10 of these autographs from, like Harrison Ford and others. So,
Wow.
but yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. I could probably talk about autographs all day, so I'm gonna try and get myself back on track, because I wanna
Good
dig
luck.
into like what. So 2006 Topps Ellen and Ginter was the first set remake of the original 1887. So can you bring us from you get this Randy Johnson base card in a team bag to just becoming obsessed with Allen and Ginter as a product, the 2006 inaugural set as a specific lane within that obsession, and then the 19 years since then.
Yeah, well, so I was obsessed back then. I was much younger, so and much poorer, so I was not going after any of the really expensive things. I don't even think I knew about Wood Mini, and printing plates and other insert sets back then, which we'll get to. But I was buying lots of base cards, like actual 300 plus card lots of base cards off of eBay at the time and just buying as much as I could, as cheaply as I could. I just was obsessed. My goal even back then was to have the greatest concentration of 2006 A&G of any collector. But I was only focused on base cards essentially. So I probably nailed that goal pretty fast because nobody else was doing that for no reason, for any good reason. Beyond that, I mean, I bought a case of it in 2007. I was collecting every year of Ginter until probably 2015 or 16 or so. I only bought a case of Ginter in 2007 until recently. I think 2020 was the next time I bought a case. So everybody goes through different life moments and focused on other things for many years. And then eventually got back into it probably in 2000, late 2018, early 2019, and just decided I didn't want to have all these collections anymore. I started really focusing in on what I cared about and what actually resonated with me. And 2006 A&G was the easy winner. And that was something that I just had consistently thought about. When I was going back into my bins of collections, that was the thing that really stood out for me. So I just decided then and there to get rid of everything else in service of this one set. So I liquidated all my other cards. I sold off movie posters and action figures and really just like everything, sold everything so I could fund this revitalized, let's call it, obsession for 2006 A&G. And it really wasn't even until 2021 or 22 where I thought it might be realistic to give a master set a shot. And the master set involves 2,344 cards. There's 16 different subsets. There are some easy ones to get, and then there's plenty of very difficult ones, like there's a no number back set that I somehow was able to complete through a lot of help through Instagram, through a collector there who just found his LCS had these for a collector who just finished the set years ago, and so I was able to buy that from him. And that's 350 cards, and there's only 50 of each no number back, so that was hard enough. The last thing on my list is completing the hand numbered of 25 bazooka back minis is what they're called. So there's 350 of those cards. They're all parallel minis to the original set, but they're all hand numbered to 25. So, these are impossible goals. These are things that should not be possible. I've been able to do that with a lot of help from friends and the network and community that we've been building. But that's what I'm laser focused on now. I've got three of those cards left. So I'm three cards away from this impossible task, which it might take me the rest of my life to get there. So it'll be fun to see how that evolves.
So just to be clear, you only have three cards left out of 20,334, was it?
2,344 cards. So
Okay,
it's
2,000. Okay. I
yeah.
added an extra zero in there. Still, 2,334 is like, just to put that in perspective, nowadays there's so many different parallels, like with Prism, for instance. That's pretty close to the exact number of rookie cards that Zion Williamson has from 2020 Panini
Yeah.
Prism. So and so I don't think there's anyone in the world who's able to get all those. So just I want to give some perspective of the challenge that you're facing. Did you mention all the three cards? Why don't you just throw them out there while we
Yeah, I'd love to.
are on it?
I'd love to. Thank you. There's three Bazooka back of 25 hand number minis. There are Vernon Wells, Orlando Hudson, and Jeff Francis. All three of them, I'm sure, have some passionate player collectors, but these are not your household names, which makes the search and this final part of the chase, exponentially harder, as as a collector. These are not cards that people are putting on eBay regularly. They're not looking through their collections. These are probably cards that are just sitting in shoeboxes somewhere that people do not think are valuable and might not be valuable to anybody other than me. So I will make it valuable for you if you have these cards, but those are the three that I'm looking for. And then just to put some exclamation marks on this thing too. A lot of that set, there's Barry Bonds autos that are only to there's of 25 Barry Bonds autos, there's of 10 A-Rod and David Wright autos. There are Josh Gibson relics that are of 50. These are of that overall 2,344 card set. There's a lot that I was able to find early enough to make it, the price point worth it, but also to make it even possible to even go after this master set. So luckily, I found some of those really hard things when I wasn't even attempting the set. And so that has
Hmm.
really, propelled me forward to be able to realistically say, I think I could do this. I think I could do this at some point in my life, but we'll see.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned some of the big names as being, difficult to get, but in my eyes, I think of an older set. The set's almost 20 years old now. It's those random non-household names that I would imagine being the difficult ones. Because as you said, if you found them and people aren't realizing you're desperate for them, you could get them for next to nothing, I'm sure. But those Barry Bond autos, um, I would think you could find one, right? I would think that someone would have one on a social media page or listed on eBay, even if it's listed for a ridiculous price. You'd be able to source one. Now it's
Yeah.
almost like Nat Turner's uh, green precious metal gem set. I forget the three. I think he's down to three cards he needs or two cards or something.
Wow.
And
I didn't know he was that close. That's cool.
like one of them is a player that nobody has ever seen a green precious metal gems of that player, and it's because it's a no name. So you just imagine how many of this, third liner or whatever you want to call it in basketball, who kids probably opened it, didn't know one what a green precious metal gems was, two they didn't even know who the player was, so they had just ended up in the garbage bin.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fear. I think it's all perspective. If I was just starting out right now, saying I was going to try it for the master set, I think the most daunting cards would be the Bonds autos and would be some of the bigger ones because the price point will be crushing. And you're never going to find them. The Bonds collectors they are passionate and they are, I think passion is probably the best word. They are passionate. They're not letting things go from their collections. I haven't seen one of the N43 autos on eBay ever. So those are just sold privately, which you need to make those inroads over time too. So I think that makes it incredibly difficult if I was just starting out. But again, because I was able to find those privately, I did find those privately and purchase them privately, 4 or 5 years ago now. The impossible moments are now, like we talked about, the no names. These are the Jeff Francis bazooka backs. These are tiny little tobacco cards. Nobody is looking through their shoe boxes for these. They might be looking for the Bonzes and the others to be able to put on eBay someday, but these are the ones that you question if they exist at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I hear your stories, I think about my own collecting, obviously, and I think about like sets that I want to go after as a collector. And when you look at this massive challenge, a big project like a master set, um, like what's the mindset? Are there maybe there's people who aren't as dedicated as you are. They're just as enthusiastic, but say like, obviously I can't, I can't imagine being able to do this. Would they break it down into subsets? Would they say, kind of rank the subsets into which ones they like the most, start completing them, and then sort of expanding into a bigger collection? Like, what does that process look like from what you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the beauties of Ginter is that it is maybe intentionally impossible to do a complete set these days. And so there are so many insert sets within them. There's so many parallels. And I think that opens it up to all kinds of really fun collecting for folks. Some of my best friends in card collecting, Ginterwood Minis, number one. He's, very specific about what he looks for there in his name, Ginterwood Minis. He's got 1,400 plus of them. That's such a cool chase. I love helping him find more. It's a great part of our relationship to help each other. Same with BB and Ginter Collector. That guy, I mean, he's gonna end up with just the vast majority of all of these bazooka back. They're not always the bazooka Brooklyn. The best way to think about them are the hand numbered of 25 backs from all years. That's what he collects. He collects some other things, but for the most part, he's collecting those, which is insane to some people, but really fun for him. He's not going after everything either. So I think that's kind of the beauty of Allen and Ginter is that you can go into it and choose a certain parallel. You can choose a player, you can choose a type of anything and really be successful and have a lot of fun. Some of them will be like the Ginterwood Minis that will be challenging because they can be pretty unaffordable for a lot of people, and not worth it for a lot of people either. But there's so many other price points within Ginter that makes it affordable for people, and it's kind of that it can be a gateway, brand, a gateway entry into card collecting. It's healthy and fun and gets you a really good start into what else might be out there as well. So that's always encouraging seeing new collectors join my Facebook group or join Instagram with nothing but questions about Ginter. We love to help out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about, golf collectors who participate in and collect from these multi-sport sets.
Yeah.
And, the way I collect from those kinds of sets is like I love my precious metal gems. So I'm going to try and get, one retro red precious metal gems of every golfer. But for someone who might not want to be spending that amount of money, there's a different parallel. And they still call it PMG. And, it might be like a pink out of 150 and it doesn't have a retro design, but that somebody could pursue that subset instead, or you could end up someone who just likes Tiger Woods and they just collect the Tiger Woods cards from each of these multi-sport sets. So I see a lot of parallels in A&G collectors versus even like a sport collector like golf.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, but before I continue that, because I know I wanted to talk about multi-sport as sort of a topic, but Allen and Ginter specifically, it's been your focus. You got rid of all your other card collections, all of your other no, all of your other collectibles, but you cleared out the, figurines and all the other stuff you've been collecting, the posters, just to focus on Allen and Ginter. So, how do you stay so laser focused?
Yeah, it's not easy, especially as a collector. I so I think a few things. So one, I'm not an investor, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not a flipper. I'm not. That's not why I do this. I certainly like to sell cards to fund my collection, but so I have an eBay and I sell cards actively, and that really helps. But as a collector, going after all of this, knowing who I am and really just kind of doing self-reflection, especially 6 or 7 years ago, and thinking about what's important to me, that is the same conversation that I have with myself constantly. When I'm looking at something new, I've wavered sometimes, and maybe relatively quickly will sell something that I'm just not as interested in anymore. I'm trying to think of an example there. I think I can find better examples though of things that have entered into this A&G lore or A&G world for me that are acceptable to collect. And so things are like archives, anything signed on 2006 A&G as a buyback for in the archives product. That is an adjacent collection that fits really well. The anniversary buybacks from 2015, that was the 10-year anniversary, that fits in adjacently really well. But otherwise, the philosophy remains the same. I think about the behavior, I think about if it's valuable for what I'm trying to do, always reflecting on the mission of continuing to the master set, but also to just build this awesome 2006 Allen and Ginter set. Is it going to be meaningful to me? Will it be meaningful to my kids? When I pass and leave this to them, there's a bigger conversation there that I'm always challenged by of, how much do my cards own me versus how much do I own them? I think about that conversation all the time. And so I know these cards own me. I know 2006 A&G owns me. So I give that to it. But I really I want to stay disciplined and make sure that that doesn't creep in other ways too. So a lot of it is just self-reflection constantly and staying disciplined about it. I really don't waver outside of it. I will buy a case of A&G every year and then sell absolutely everything. I just like being involved in the community. I like being involved in Ginter. I like knowing as much as I can if somebody's coming to me with questions. I like having cards to be able to help people out with. I mean, that's seriously just that part of it. It is self-serving in two ways. One, to just be a part of the community and not have FOMO, but also, continue to be somebody that people will reach out to if they have questions about Ginter. Ideally, they have some 2006 that they're willing to sell or trade. And so I want to be the first person that they would think of in that situation as well. So it is self-serving too, in a really fun way and hopefully beneficial way for a community. So I don't know if that answers the question. I feel like I just rambled for a while.
No, that was perfect. You hit on so many different things that I love talking about. And I mean, we could circle all the way back to when you and I first connected, and I was doing this investor versus collector debate, and uh, I was fresh off of collaborating with my friend Paul, who was very focused on the investment side, and I always brought, a hobby collector side to the conversations to the point where I started to get a little bit grinded down by just constantly talking about flipping and making money, and they'd rather have the money in their pocket than the cards in their hands, which, is the opposite of what Brett McGrath says. But you hit on that in what you just said, but you also hit on the argument on the other side, which was how much do my cards own me rather than I own
Yeah.
my cards. So collectors, it's a trap. It's almost you become so obsessed that you're blinded to almost the ridiculousness of how much time, effort, and money and concentration and focus you're putting into this as opposed to other priorities in your life. And so I've been doing this series called the 12 Rules for Hobby and really trying to like reawaken some of these ideas for myself because you can become a little bit too invested into the hobby, not financially, but just your mental capacity and everything. So I love the balance that you brought, and you already had a lot of that on your mind when I was still very much, pro collecting, anti investing, and just sort of creating this binary dialogue. And so thank you for one for giving me that reminder that I so dearly needed, and then continuing that reminder as we talk. The biggest thing that Paul loves to say to me is like, what's going to happen to all your cards, when you pass away, or your kid's going to be stuck with this mess. And especially those of us who collect wide collections. If I have all these Arizona Coyotes cards that aren't worth anything, what are my kids going to do with it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, this is such a good topic. I love this topic for all kinds of reasons, but I think it really drives the decisions that we can make and make better in all of our eBay searches, all the purchases we make. I mean, it is something that as I'm working in my office, I work from home, I'm constantly surrounded by my cards and thinking about them. And I think that really helps because I don't I want the collection. I want my kids to know what it means to me. They don't have to keep it. They can do whatever they want with it, but I want it to be organized. I want there to be meaning around it. I want it to make sense. I don't want it to be some random grouping of things that doesn't mean enough to me to have spent that much time on. Um, and Mike, I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate the compliments there. But man, I am obsessed. I have a website, I have Instagram, I have Facebook, I have special backgrounds that I spend days and hours on making for 10 pictures of a card. It's something that consumes me, and I kind of let it consume me to a degree. And I know when I'm burning out, and I try to stay away a little bit more in those times, but. I love it. I love everything about it, and my kids know how important it is to me. So I want to pass it on. I want to pass on the heirloom, but I want to make sure that they understand how much this specific part of it meant to me. And if it doesn't fit into that rubric, when I'm organizing or doing something else with the cards, I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to find hopefully somebody that appreciates it way more than I do. But I'm not perfect at it either, so all kinds of mistakes being made constantly here.
Hmm. You you're preaching to the choir. I mean,
Yeah, I
I've got
love
a
it.
podcast. I run a Facebook group about golf cards and memorabilia. I'm
Yeah.
also on the Instagram, networking constantly. So, you and I are one and the same with that obsession. But pursuing meaning, that's something that really stood out to me. Uh, that is something that those investor types can't understand. If all they care about is how much the card is worth, if that's how everybody looked at it, there would be no market. There needs to be those of us who actually love the cards, and it could be for any reason, but we just get obsessed with photographing the cards, creating content around the cards, surrounding
Yeah.
ourselves. I've got cards all over my desk, and I enjoy looking at them. So, maybe I'll end my comments on that whole investor versus collector debate because it's been beaten to death. It might get revived again one of these days, but I'll end it with that. At least we're finding meaning and we're not just sort of treating them like penny stocks, kind of sending them back and forth. Um,
Sure.
and now that's you asked, you said you were rambling and maybe you didn't answer the question. You did answer the question, but my question was, how do you stay laser focused? And you brought it to staying laser focused on the hobby, and that's awesome because I think so many listeners can relate to that. There's probably not even a single Allen and Ginter collector on anywhere near the same wavelength as you listening to this podcast, but I think a lot of listeners in this lane who are listening to this show they love the cards and they can relate to everything you just said. Um, just to kind of unpack this a little bit more, you're laser focused on Allen and Ginter. And, I asked, if you can waver at all with that specific focus. And you brought up archives, for instance. So those buyback autos. Is that just another Allen and Ginter card, like an old Allen and Ginter card that's been autographed and then repackaged within a different product? Is that what that is?
Exactly. Yep. They buy back old 2006 cards, and I it's exciting seeing who signs every year and just trying to find them because there's a lot of mystery around how many there will be and which cards they've signed. But
Hmm.
yeah, they're just buying them back. They have the athlete sign and they put a stamp on it and then package it into the signature series, which I love. It's such a fun product.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's funny because in my mind, I imagined when I asked if you wavered at all, that maybe you'd be gravitating towards like some of the shiny, I don't know, Metal Universe cards or whatever. But your answers, it really revealed the truth is that in your mind, wavering from a true Allen and Ginter collector is considering other Allen and Ginter cards that weren't necessarily pulled out of a current Allen and Ginter package. So it's like that. That's hardcore for to even differentiate between an Allen and Ginter card versus, one that came from archives. Because in
Yeah.
my mind, they're all one and the same. So
Yeah.
that reveals how dedicated you truly are.
Yeah, dedicated is a good word for it. That's a healthy word for it. The others, I think it is like they now have every year they release a rookie variation that's in retail only, and it's designed in the 2006 A&G style, which definitely been very tempted to consider collecting those, but they're not original cards. I love that they pay respect to those cards and to whoever collects those. Awesome. Please keep collecting them. That's so cool. But it's just not enough to waver at all yet, at least. I will say yet. Who knows what'll happen in the future? But there's also, what's cool about Allen and Ginter, and I don't know if you. Hopefully, this is not like we're not painting the picture here that we're getting promoted by Tops to promote Allen and Ginter. I don't want to make it seem that way. I just love it. But I will say there are so many different personalities every year, celebrities, musicians, and what have you, that I definitely have been like Stephen Dubner was in the set 2022. He started the Freakonomics podcast and brand, and that's a guy I admire immensely. So I super collected him. So I will go outside of my lane for a particular subject. It doesn't happen very often, and that was the last time it did happen. Hopefully, it will happen again because it's fun finding every variation of that card. But that's about it. That's about as far as I'll let myself get outside of 2006.
Ridiculous golf card collector.